Okay, yes.
Thank you very much, first of all, for having accepted the paper and for me to be here. It's a pleasure. In modern historiography, it is often held that the snake was the sole animal in the ancient Greek world, that it embodies the soul of the departed. The snake was accepted by Martin Nilsson as the only animal in antiquity that might have played that role. Recently, Jan Brema, on a very comprehensive course on the beliefs of the Greeks, accepted this idea, at least for the archaic Greek world. Nevertheless, as he remarks, the classical discussion of the snake as the soul of the dead is not satisfactory for the investigation, since they use the term soul without reflecting on the relationship of the snake and the soul of the dead. If the deceased was normally thought to be represented by a psyche in the underworld, what then was the position of the snake? A similar problem we encounter in iconography when there is an explicit psyche on a vase, are we to understand the snake also as a symbol of the dead or as a soul animal? If it is clear that a relationship existed between the snake and the dead, it is not clear what this specific relationship was. The problem consists of defining whether within the wide frame of the tectonic symbolism of the snake in the ancient Greek world, it is possible to assume a particular and a specific relation with the soul of the departed. I'm going to focus here on a group of vases in the circle of the Liagros painter, dated from the end of the 6th century before Christ, on which a momentous passage from the Iliad is depicted, the dragging of Hector's corpse by Achilles at Troy. A recurrent iconography in these scenes is Patroclus' funerary tumulus, very often painted white, on which a snake is figured. A third element linked with the tumulus is the eidolon, the little shape of whose function we are going to see later. These vases, these depictions can be divided into different groups. First group shows Achilles' chariot standing still, and the second one depicts Achilles' chariot rushing forwards at full speed. This hydra, that's a very good example. It's a black-figured Athenian hydra from München. It dates from the end of the 6th century, 510 before Christ, and it carries her theme on the shoulder of the vase. In the middle of the scene stands Achilles' chariot facing left, drawn by 4 horses. There is a driver dressed in a long white robe that has already taken his place and is ready to start. Behind the chariot there is a naked body of a dead, bearded man lying on his back with his arms stretched backwards and his legs lashed to the hub of the wheel. That's Hector's corpse. Beside him there is a warrior, Achilles, leaning on his lance and armed with greaves, a shield and helmet. He seems to be looking at a dead man. To the right there is a domed tumulus, Patroclus' tumulus, painted white, on which a bearded snake is depicted with its mouth wide open. On the tumulus there is a small eidolon post. From the left, a winged woman with herald's staff enters the scene, and this figure is Iris. And the attitude of this snake we have here on the tumulus is not much different from the attitude of this other snake that is depicted on the same vase, on this occasion on Darius' shield. The next vase is this Lekithos from the Museum of Delos, also belonging to the Liagros group. The scheme is very similar, but with the difference that Iris has come right up to the chariot, and with her outstretched hands, she seems to address the standing warrior. The empty space between the mount and the warrior and Achilles has been filled up with this little flying figure, the eidolon. The third vase belongs in this series. Is this Lekithos? Is this amphora from the Museum of British Museum in London by the Priamos painter. In this case, we have inscriptions that clarify on the other hand, clear scene depicted here. The standing chariot a face is left, and the charioteer is named as Automedon, who is harnessing the horses and ready to set them in motion. Behind the man, Achilles, naked and armed with shield, spear, greaves, and helmet again. She's bending over Hector's dead body. The body is facing upwards again. And behind him there is a funerary mound, again painted white, on which there is a snake. This snake, in this occasion, seems as if it was looking at the corpse in the same way that Achilles does. Over it hovers Patroclus' little eidolon, armed and wingless, identified also by the corresponding inscription. The second group shows Achilles' chariot rushing forwards at full speed. I'm going to go briefly through these vases without going deeper into the iconographical description so as not to exceed my time. The pattern is similar in all of these vases, despite some contamination from battle scenes that we are going to see, or some element that appears or disappears in some of these scenes. But basically, the images show Achilles' chariot rushing, and the corpse of Hector, the mound, the snake, and the little figure, the eidolon. That's an example from the Metropolitan Museum in New York, or also this one from the Louvre. That comes from Naples. The tumulus on this occasion has faded away already. Or this other vase from London. This one from Cambridge, from the Hope collection, shows an extra personage falling here. That's a warrior. That's a contamination from battle scenes, because that figure doesn't fit here at all. It's a contamination from battle scenes. Or this strange image from a vase in Berlin that shows Achilles oddly running towards the chariot instead of being placed nearby and rushing forwards. This well-preserved figure in Boston is interesting because it joins two different episodes into a single impossible moment. It is joining the passage from the Iliad, from the book 22:405 and following, in which Priam and Hecuba are witnessing the dragging of a son's body from the Dardanian gate, and the episode a little bit further in the poem when Iris comes rushing into the scene towards Achilles carrying the message from the Zeus. And finally, this vase in Münster is interesting. It is the last vase of the series, and this time the snake has disappeared, and the place that the snake usually has been taken by a lion. Again, there's a little figure up there and an inscription that names it as Psyche. So, first of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is the Psyche? What does Psyche mean in the Homeric poems? The inscription is referring to the small figure and identifies it as the soul of Patroclus. In the Homeric poems, the Psyche is the soul of the dead, in a sense more of spirit of death or even apparition or living corpse. And according to Bremer researchers, it derives from the free soul of the living. That is to say, the free soul of the living becomes the soul of the dead, the Psyche, and it's made visible through the eidolon, through this little figure, this little shape that adopts the features of the deceased while still alive. The soul of the dead does not have the characteristics and psychological traits that were proper of the soul of the living, like there were Timos, Nos, and Menos. In the Homeric poems, the soul, after death, goes directly and without delay to Hades, until the burial, or more specifically, until the destruction of the body through the fire. There are still some ties between the body and the soul, and that is why Patroclus can appear in front of Achilles, or Elpenor can beg Odysseus for a burial. With the destruction of the body, the link is destroyed and the souls will hover forever in Hades as powerless shapes of what they were before. So the differences then between the Homeric text and the vases are then evident. The tumulus on the vases signals that the burial has already taken place, but the psyche is still present in the tomb, in a clear opposition with the epos. This fact has puzzled scholars and has been explained both following post-Homeric thoughts, pre-Homeric thoughts, and contemporary thoughts. But what from the point of view of philology or of history of religion could be a problem, I think it's not really such a problem if we focus it from iconography, because after all we are dealing with images, and images have their own language. So I think it's not difficult to find a probable reason for the depiction of the little shape of Patroclus' psyche in form of an idol next to the tomb. It is there to receive Achilles' honors, that is to say, Hector's corpse. The Eidola appear in the images because through them the painter confirms and makes visible that the ghost accepts the tributes that are being offered to him. Also, it is good to remember that the soul usually lingers on a little bit near the tomb because it does not begin an afterlife immediately after death, but on the contrary, there was some delay in the transition. So I think that's the psyche functions as an iconographical feature used by painter to confirm and make visible that the ghost actually accepts the tributes. So, being the eidolon, the visual depiction of the soul of the dead, what is then the role of the snake? Apart from the vases of which the snake is figured on Patroclus' tumulus, there are also some works on which a similar pattern appears, and that can help throw light on this field of Greek religion. Also, by the Liabris group comes this hydra in Berlin, that it's also interesting here. It depicts the moment right before the sacrifice of Polyxene at Achilles' tomb. To the left, there are 4 horses surrounded by 3 warriors, and 2 of them armed with spear and shield. Next to them, Polyxene, that is being carried to her destiny. She puts her hand to her cheek in sorrow, that's a sign of sorrow. And we have again a tumulus, white. Over it hovers the little figure again, and there is a snake, and this time also an extra figure, a dog. Also attributed to the Liabris group, this vase from Nîmes, or this other one that's this scene has been identified with the story of Orestes and Electra. Electra would be here Odin, his brother, and to dedicate the sword at Agamemnon's tomb. And out of the mythological realm, we have also some depictions of tombs and snakes. One comes in this famous Canterbury by the Perisoma group in Paris, that comes from Bulti, and dates to the end of the 6th century again. It's one of the very few representations after the geometrical period of the ephora, of the ritual of the 3rd day. The ritual when the dead on the 3rd day after his death is taken to the tomb. In this case, the tomb is already depicted on the vase. Again, this time is not rounded, and we have again the snake. There are also 2 elements, new elements here. This tree and this little hole that is thought to stand for the cremation hole to evacuate the smoke of the burning of the body inside the tomb. There is one more vase, last one, this time from Athens. It's quite late vase, it dates to the mid-5th century, 450. And it's an artifact figure of Literaturus by the Sappho painter. On the neck of this vase there are again 2 women shown by a tumulus topped up by a vase of the same typology, a Literaturus, a funerary shape. And in this drawing here, we can see, because it's not very well preserved, this part, we can see where two painters' mind they were inside the tomb or painted on the tomb. We'll see later. That's a snake and four little Eidola again. So with all these vases, with all this information, we should try now to find a meaning for the snake at the tomb. Apart from the differences that these vases narrate, the unifying aspect that joins them all is the presence of the tumulus and snake. On these vases, the snake is of a considerable size, depicted both bearded and beardless, and for occasions it looks at the same direction as the flying eidolon, and it usually raises its body and opens its mouth, a heraldic position that does not differ much from the attitude of other snakes that are depicted on the same vase, for example the Uncanny Image. Nobody in the scene seems to be aware of its existence, but suggests that neither the eidolon nor the snake were real entities in the mythological account. They are visual signs used by the vase painter, but they are out of the visible action, and where they are silent spectators. They are iconographical features. The same idea is valid for other vases out of the Liagus group, as we have seen. But when we look at other vases, for example, the last Lutrophorus in Athens, we may have the feeling that the painter is trying to show also what to his mind there was inside the tomb, the little Eidola and the snake. So, as it was advanced before, this is one of the problems we face when dealing with these images. That's the grade of reality of the snakes depicted on the vases. That is to say, the problem of knowing whether these snakes are intended to represent a real aspect of the contemporary tumulus, reproducing the actual paintings of the tomb or sculptures placed nearby, or whether the painter depicted on the vases what he thought there was inside the tomb, as it can appear in the Athenian Lutrophorus. A middle point would be to take the snakes as external signs used by the painter, just for identification matters, to make clear that the tumulus was actually a tomb doubly in the sense of the eidolon, and becoming the snake then just a visual sign, but not for that lacking of meaning. Let's go briefly to each of these possibilities. Pfeiffer, a German scholar, comments that about the Lutrophorus in Athens, that auf dem Grabhügel hat der Künstler gemalt, was sich seiner Meinung nach in dessen Inneren befindet. Also the snake and the Eidola. He takes both depictions as the symbol of the dead. In that way, the double nature of the Greek thought on the dead would gather here. But I have already referred my doubts that the snake was the embodiment of the soul of the dead, and that it was in this way depicted on these vases. The literary sources linking the snake and the dead come from a very late time, and some of them from Rome. Pliny the Elder reports the following regarding the relationship of the snake and the dead. We find it stated by many authors that a serpent is produced from the spinal marrow of a man. Many creatures, in fact among the quadrupeds, even have a secret and mysterious origin. In an important passage by Plutarch, he explains that after the death of Cleomenes III, king of Sparta, a huge snake appeared coiling itself about the body. Event that was taken as a sign that the man was a superior nature and beloved by the gods. This idea was refuted by the wise men, explaining that the putrefying bodies produce several kinds of insects and worms. In antiquity, they believed in the spontaneous generation. It was thought that these maggots form naturally from rotting meat, but actually nowadays we know that they come from the eggs laid by the flies, and which will become themselves all insects. Elian also refers the belief that the marrow changes into a snake. Nevertheless, he points out a moralizing concept when affirming that it is just the marrow of the bad men that turns into a snake as a reward for their bad actions in life. The But there is a relationship between the serpent and the soul of the departed, or more specifically, with the body, with the rotting body. On the vases, it seems clear that what is being matched with the psyche of the dead is a small figure, the eidolon, sometimes expressly labeled as psyche, sometimes the inscription Patroclus also appears, as we saw. So I don't think that two psyche are intended here. Redundancy is not quite common in archaic iconography. And hence, I would rule out the hypothesis that the snake represents the soul of the dead of these vases. So, another German scholar, Eva Krabo, thinks that these snakes on the vases must not be taken as a mere painter fantasy, but as the image of real snakes placed next to the tomb or in the built landscape surrounding the tomb. So the role of lions, well, she thinks that because the vase in Münster that I showed before was the last of a series, and instead of a snake, it depicted a lion. So the role of lions as protectors of tombs is widely known in antiquity. So she thinks that before that date, before the date of the vase, the snake was charged with the protector role. So funerary earth mounds were quite common in archaic Attica. Both inhumation and cremation graves were normally covered by sculpture and topped with vases. These built tombs are very likely to have received painted plaques by the leading artists of the day, but we haven't got any of them. Well, some of them we've got, but not in context though. So animals seem to have been used as to mark the tombs, at least in Attica, and among them we count bulls, dogs, eagles, and lions. Lions especially. They were quite common on communal tombs. For example, those for the fallen in the Thermopylae, and a lion also topped Leonidas' tomb. But contrary to what it might have been expected, the snakes do not appear as tomb monuments. They are, as we have been observing, undoubtedly related with the dead and the underworld, but they do not seem to have been regarded appropriate for individual monuments. So, where do all these remarks leave us in regard to our vases? I think that from all the above exposed, we cannot conclude that the snake depicted in the tumulus, is meant to be the soul of the departed, but rather a visual sign used by the vase painter to make clear that what is being depicted there on the vase is indeed a tomb. The soul of the dead does not seem to have been particularly thought of or depicted as a snake, and when the psyche appears on the vases, it is clearly meant under the shape of the eidolon, usually labeled. And I wanted also to do some remarks about other scenes that show the snake in relation with a tomb, but with other patterns, but due to natural time restrictions, I'm not going to go to that. I'm just going to present a little bit the problem. There are other scenes that show the snake in a martyr situation, or in a violent situation, next to a tomb, or almost springing from a recent martyred body, being understood there as a zoomorphic Erinis, the shape of these goddess, before Aeschylus gave them the human body in the mid of the 5th century. And also, it is also depicted as a guardian spirit of the tomb of the times. So, but that would bring us into another sleeping territory of Greek religion, in which the dead and the snake is involved. That's the equation of the soul with the snake and the Erinis, which from the actual state of the research is not easy to hold either. Based on iconographical research, one can conclude that the snake and the Erinis were related, because before the Erinis were depicted with a human body, the snake was kind of symbolizing Erinis. But the equation, soul of the dead, avenging soul of the dead, and Irenaeus cannot be safely taken, neither the identification of a snake and soul. So we would have a triangle, but not all the parts are correspondent, actually. So, but I'm conscious also that by trying to establish all these subtle divisions, I may have drawn an artificial and upward line in one of the most confusing and unintelligible fields of the Greek religion, the beliefs concerning the underworld, and maybe making the mistake that Jane Harrison so openly and vehemently criticized more than a century ago. And one may also wonder that and argue that while all sources reflect and methods reflect the reality I've exposed in this talk, the Greek popular religion could have discovered other paths in which the snake in its strong, and on the other hand, that symbolism could indeed have been taken as a soul of the departed, or as a sign of the presence of the dead ancestor. That point would explain very well some images and some thoughts about the household snake. But again, this idea is not what the sources reflect, and not at least in archaic and classical times. So that's all for me. Thank you very much.